We can stay with Turkey, though. Sinan Ciddi is a non-resident senior fellow on the Turkey Centre regarding military and political power foundation for defence of democracies. Hello, good to have you with us today. Just a quick question. We've seen going into this, Sinan, that, this has been an intense campaign. The stakes are clearly very high. Campaigning, of course, we saw went down to the wire. Walk us through the issues. I just asked our correspondent, what is on people's mind going into this poll?
Well, I think people are very anxious from a variety of perspectives. They're questioning whether they will be able to have a better economic future. I think that's on the minds of most Turks voting today. They've been finding it very hard to make a living over the past 2 years based on the basic rise in consumer price inflation. Just buying staples such as, the essentials of Turkish cuisine, such as onions and potatoes that goes into just about everything, has skyrocketed. The price of meat, cheese is just astronomically debilitatingly expensive, and people are really thinking that they need a change. So that's one thing that I think is on people's minds. But also, there's also a consideration about what kind of democratic country they want to live in. Do they want 5 more years of Erdogan, who's essentially been in power for 21 years? Or is it a time for change based on their conception or some people's perception that a better democratic way of life is available with Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu's election as president?
Talk to us a little bit, Sinan, about the earthquake. There's been logistical problems, understandably. People being asked to go back to, their hometowns where, essentially a lot of buildings no longer exist following that earthquake. How much is this earthquake going to play into how people chose to vote today?
That's a good question, and you're right. I think, the earthquake-stricken provinces inside of Turkey, which is considerable, it affected, 10 million people who, let's just say half of them are voter eligible, who are not underage. It's a huge logistical challenge because voting takes place in public buildings such as schools, most of which are probably uninhabitable and destroyed. So just getting ballot boxes out there and facilitating the vote is difficult. But I think what we're seeing is that has largely taken place, and many people have chosen to essentially get on public transportation or their personal vehicles to actually go and vote. In terms of what that will feed into, if you're asking if there's a widespread resentment for the government for the lack of good response, and or whether they believe the government is ultimately responsible for upholding building standards that should have prevented a ballot box, we don't know. A little bit of information came out in the last few days in polling suggesting that President Erdogan continues to be popular in some of these earthquake zones despite what's happened, but we shall have to see the outcome following the publication of results.
Well, Sinan, as you know, the polling stations are now closed, which means essentially if it hasn't begun already, vote counting will shortly be getting underway. The opposition has spoken about, monitors to, take a look and see how these votes are being counted. Can we expect logistical problems there or activity which is, underhand when it comes to counting in all of what's going on in Turkey currently?
I mean, look, a little bit of irregularity can be expected here and there. We're seeing it across, people are reporting it, but there's heightened vigilance right now to ensure that the vote counting takes place sort of accurately. There are election monitors, both international as well as domestic. Some are party lines, some are independent. There's hypervigilance on the part of the citizen body as well as political parties. And Turkey, despite everything, has a long history of electioneering in peaceful and democratic ways. And I think many people expect this to be one of the crowning achievements of this campaign, whereby the vote count will be peacefully and accurately handled. We can hope for that. One thing to expect, though, let's not read too much into the early results that come out, because the first ballot boxes that will be open and account reflecting the outcome will be in the east, and those are typically smaller precincts, smaller provinces with less population. I think as the hours wear on, the best thing to hope for is essentially to look at what the big cities in the west of the country, Ankara westwards, Istanbul, Izmir, these sort of major urban populations, that will be more indicative of the actual result.
All right, Sinan Ciddi speaking to us from Washington this afternoon. Thanks very much.